higher beings, these words are for you alone. Only her of mind so great could filter through the veil. Though she foresaw this land fecund, her absence there would ail. Sent to wander, duty-bound, that verdance should preserve, and pray return, devoted still, and able yet to serve. You stand, with the howling wind cascading around you. There is a blizzard that hurtles in front of your eyes as you make slow and laboured steps through a thick snow that lays at your feet. You're barely able to see anything but the soft glow of the hanging lamps beside you. You've been travelling for some time, a time indeterminate, but what feels like a long, long while. Your memory of the past is a blurry tangle of fragmented images and emotions that only sometimes recur to you briefly in your dreams. And it's only now that you stand here in this bitterly cold storm that you begin to feel somewhat awake, somewhat focused for the first time that you can remember. Now Pelo, or should I say Tom, as Pelo stands here, would you like to describe him for our listeners?
So Pelo is a small bug, even compared to other bugs. He walks around with a small fawn as a weapon and a small shell as a shield. He's mostly draped in small bits of moss and lichen which build up a sort of cloak around him, with small antenna-like frills coming from his head. To the unexpecting eye, he might come across as quite cute on the by and by, and quite oftentimes he would use that mossy cloak of his to hide in and make some shelter whilst he's travelling.
And so, continuing to drudge through the snow, there is a gentle but rather sudden change of these howling winds as the snow around you begins to delicately float to the ground. The path ahead becomes clearer, and you see now that you are stood upon a huge hill of snow with a gradual downward slope towards what looks like the dim, glowing lights of a small town. As Pelo looks down on this, what's going through his mind?
How strange this place feels. It's different to what he's used to. It's less vibrant and certainly less alive, and that makes him feel on edge.
And with this trepidation in his mind, does he begin to head towards this town?
With one final look behind him, yes, he does.
One final look at where he's once been. He heads on down the slope, and with its length and breadth, and the deepness of the snow. It's a good few minutes of walking before Pelo reaches the very bottom, leaving almost perfect, small rounded footprints in a line behind himself. And as he reaches the bottom, before him, he sees a few scattered, roundish buildings that huddle together to form a small hamlet of sorts, with softly glowing lights in the windows of these buildings. In the centre of these buildings is an elegant, curving lamp post and a sturdy-looking bench made of wrought iron. Next to these stands a stout, elderly bug who's shrouded in a frayed cloak, who seems to be ever so slightly shivering in the cold. This whole scene is delicately covered with a dusting of the powdery snow that now gently falls from the sky. What would Pelo like to do?
He's going to take a look around and absorb this architecture, and then check to see if it's only the one bug he can see, or if there are more around. If there are any above him, flying in the sky, if he can hear anything burrowing below his feet.
I'd like you to roll an investigation for me.
That's going to be a 6 for investigation.
With a 6, Pelo keeps his eyes to the sky and the breadth around him, and tries to lend an ear out to see if he can feel the presence of any other bugs, but as far as he's aware, it's just the one directly in front of him, although the gently flickering lights from the surrounding buildings would suggest to him that there is at least some other presences around.
Well then, if that's the case, Pelo is going to drop down into his smallest self and cover himself entirely in that mossy cloak of his. And when he does this, he uses it as I've mentioned, a protective shell of sorts to disguise him or his normal self from strangers. And as he does so, he'll then scoot along the floor as a harmless, small bush-like creature and approach this elder bug.
So transformed into this even more endearing form of Pelo, as he scoots along the floor and finds himself ever closer towards this elder bug. The bug suddenly seems to notice Pelo's presence, and looking down, takes a deep, sharp breath of the cold air around and says, "Oh there, traveller. From a distance, I thought you might be one of those poor, lost souls from below. But I see now that you are civil and quite endearing. You've done well to breach the storm. Since the changing of the winds, we've welcomed few guests to this town. Tell me, what brings you to these parts, traveller?"
I'm looking for something.
You wouldn't be the first traveller to come through these parts to say something like that. And tell me, do you know what it is you look for? A dream? Riches, perhaps?
Something else. Something important. So important I can't remember. But I've come a long way for it, and I know I'm getting closer. I'm sure of it.
I should say you are. Yes. Many a grand thing has happened in the kingdom below our feet. I should say it's most likely not here in Dirtmouth that you seek what you are looking for.
Dirtmouth. Now that rings a bell.
Why, it is the very town you stand in.
And you are?
Oh, you may refer to me as the Elder Bug.
Certainly.
And you?
You may refer to me as Pelo.
Well, Pelo, welcome. Please do feel free to spend as long as you like in our humble town. I think you'll find the rest of our inhabitants quite welcoming and willing to offer you aid.
Thank you. I think I will. You mentioned those came up from below. Where is this below?
The only existing entrance to that lost kingdom, Hallownest. You'll find it just along the path, the old abandoned well. Though be careful as you enter. I'm not sure quite of the state of things down there at present.
Thank you. I think I can handle myself.
By the look in your eye, I would say you can.
Oh, thank you. I might stop in and ask some more questions.
Please do.
Over there. What's that building?
And as you gesture over towards the closest building to yourself, the Elder Bug turns his head and says, "Oh, that will be our local merchant, Dobe. He has, well, not a large stock, but you may find something useful. And between you and I, he is not so business-minded, shall we say, so I'm sure you will find a bargain. If you should be looking for anything that might help guide you through Hallownest, you can find some lapping materials over at Mason. Mason is just in that building over there and points in the opposite direction. She'll take care of your needs."
Thank you, Elder Bug.
Very welcome. Travel safe.
I will. And he scurries away towards the map supplies. I'm a little bit surprised at the kindness that was just shared with him.
And as the Elder Bug gives you a small, curt smile and a nod as you scurry away, and you notice that he just continues to look out into the middle distance, taking short, sharp breaths of the bitter air. You head towards the mapping supply building pointed out. As you enter through the doorway of the store, you are immediately greeted with a tight space that contains a broad desk, behind which is a bright-faced young bug. Her nose is quite long and pointed, and her eyes are wide and expressive behind thick glasses. Surrounding her are many pieces of parchment and writing tools, and you can see there are bunk beds embedded in the wall behind her desk. And when she notices you enter into the shop, she quickly snaps from a disinterested lean against the counter to a more upright, welcoming posture. And she says to you, "Welcome, traveller. I'm afraid we don't have much in the way of maps just now, but perhaps we'll have something that might help you on your way." And she gestures to the desk in front of her, on top of which are two ornamental pedestals. On each of these pedestals, you'll see two items. One is a strange-looking charm, labelled the Wayward Compass. On the other pedestal is a set of parchment and writing tools. And the young girl looks up at you with a slightly nervous, slightly expectant face.
Well, I was hoping to take a trip down that well of yours in town, and I was led to believe there might be some maps in here. I'm not too sure what I can do with those.
Oh, you'll be travelling to Hallownest. I'd certainly love to travel down there as well. I hear it's a marvel. But I'm stuck here, home, while my mother is off defending the town, and my brother is out mapping the kingdom. I'm afraid we would have had more, but I don't think my brother has made much progress yet. It was my father who did all of the work in mapping the great Kingdom of Hallownest, but he took everything before he left for the wilds beyond, and said it was important for my brother to make a mark for himself and learn the trade. And so I'm afraid until he returns with something, I don't have much for you. Though you might find him down there. He could perhaps help you.
Perhaps he can. Do you know where he may have gone?
That I'm afraid I can't tell you. I'm sure he's off having some wonderful adventures. Gosh, I can only imagine it. I dream about it sometimes. I do hope that my mother or brother will return, so that perhaps, maybe, I will have a chance to go down there, or just hear their stories. Gosh, I'm sure they have such wonderful stories. I would love to hear them.
Well, if I see them, I will pass a message.
You will?
Of course.
That would be marvellous.
No, I can't promise how much of a success I may be. I think it's my first time going down here.
Oh, you are new to the area?
I think so. There's nothing particularly familiar about this place. I know I've got to go down there for something. Oh, I wish I could remember.
You are a strange bug. Where did you come from?
I come from... It was a beautiful place. So loud and lively. Very different to this. But I can't remember where.
Well, I hope you do remember. I'm sure you have such great stories as well to tell. I'd love to hear them.
Well, if I'm next passing through. But, anyway, what are these things? The gestures down to the 2 pedestals to the side.
And she sort of nervously clasps her hands together as she somewhat trepidatiously answers, "Well, I don't have a whole lot of information. I've just been tasked with keeping the shop, really. But I believe this here," pointing to the item labelled the Wayward Compass, "is a particular charm of sorts that will, well, help you always find your way. Most useful if you have a map of your own. And here," as she gestures to the parchment and writing set, "will allow you to make maps of your own, or indeed perhaps write any notes you may want to take."
Well, they do sound both quite useful. No, it's only just dawned on me, I don't think I have any money.
Oh. Well, I'm not quite sure how to help you then.
That's okay.
Do you have anything else valuable?
And he lifts himself up out of his small bushy form back onto 2 legs where he looks slightly more humanoid than before. He sort of shakes himself out, and
at which the young girl sort of stares at you in awe, her eyes getting even wider if it were at all possible. And she almost gasps to look at your taller form.
And with that, he then lets out a small laugh and lifts his arms, shakes himself about, and nothing drops down. Just the shell in one hand and the thorn in the other.
"Are you an adventurer?"
Yeah, I think so.
Wow. I've never really met a real adventurer. Just my mother. If you were to have any stories of your adventures, I might be willing to trade one of these things for some impressive tale of gallantry.
Oh, thank you. As soon as I remember one.
And she looks down at the desk, quite deflated. "Well, if you do, let me know."
I will. Thank you, though. I don't have a map and I made it this far. Well, thank you for your time, and I'll keep an eye out for your brother.
Please do.
And what was his name?
Conifer.
Okay. And I'm sorry, I don't know if I if I got yours?
Mason. My name is Mason.
Nice to meet you, Mason. I think I've been Pelo.
Oh. Well, possibly Pelo. Nice to meet you.
Until next time.
Until then.
And with a sort of pleasant hop and a skip, staying in his normal upright bug form, he'll pop back out of the shop and try and spy down the road to wherever this well may be.
So, as he exits the shop, Mason looking after him with a mixture of awe and awkwardness. Pelo enters back onto the main road, and looking down, some few paces off, away from the main buildings, he can indeed quite clearly see what looks like a short brick well.
Well, with a slightly refreshed optimism based on his small time in this town, he's going to head over and investigate the well.
So Pelo makes some slow, quiet steps towards the well, and he begins to feel the desolate nature of the landscape around him as he comes away from the warmth of the glowing lights of the town. And as he gets closer to the well, you can see that it is quite old, disused, but there is a clear darkness, as if to suggest it would run quite deep. And I'll just get Pelo to roll a perception for me now.
And that's going to be a 9.
And with a 9, as he stands next to the well and its deepness, it feels like he can hear the wind once again, whistling, almost wailing, off in the distance, over further down the path, beyond the well itself, which just adds to the desolate nature of the area.
Well then, with no more reason to hesitate, assuming there's a rope down this well, or some means to come back up.
Upon some very cursory investigation, he will see that there is a rope by means that he may lower himself, or indeed ascend once again.
He takes a deep breath and will begin to lower himself down.
After a deep breath, he makes his way over the short brick wall of the well, holding tight onto the rope, and begins to lower himself into the dark, cold well. I'll get you to roll an acrobatics for the success of this.
That's a critical success for a total of 21.
Fantastic. very skillfully, very agile, as Pelo now finds himself to be. After a few hops and bounds, almost as if abseiling down the well, he in fact finds himself confident enough to let go entirely, twirl through the air, and jump to the bottom. And as the cold, damp air rushes past his ears, he lands on the ground at the bottom of the well with a deep thud. But perfectly unharmed. And makes his way up from a bending position to stand up straight. In an environment which at first is quite dark, just for a moment, while his eyes adjust to the dim light. But then you find yourself standing in this highly impressive, narrow tunnelway that is quite like a crossroads. There's a path either side of you that is lined regularly with stone columns and a ceiling decorated with ornate twirls of iron. Now the air is thick with the scent of decay in this place, and there is a very distant hum from perhaps unseen creatures that may lurk nearby. And the whole place is saturated with this faint, ethereal glow from the lanterns that line the paths. There's just the sound of a delicate, dripping water that echoes throughout these caverns. Now in front of you directly where you've landed, there is a signpost, quite elegantly written. One sign points in one direction and reads Greenpath, and one sign points in the exact opposite direction and reads the Black Egg Temple.
Pelo feels a hint of a memory coming back to him, looking upon this sign. Not much more than that, but something is pulling him towards the green path. But he's going to look around a little bit more and soak in this strangely artificial area and feel that sense of stagnation, something that almost repulses him on an instinctual level, and all that optimism from mere moments ago swiftly left his shell, and now he feels a little bit more like an adventurer, on edge again, fawn in hand ready, paying close attention to that distant buzzing, and strangely fighting an urge to smash that sign in front of him and walk on forward nonetheless.
And as Pelo, now instilled with this new trepidation, yet restraint, which direction does he step?
Towards Greenpath.
As Pelo heads in the direction signposted Greenpath, he must continue walking along these seemingly forgotten trails. And it's a cold and desolate walk along these tunnel paths. No life seems to stir around him. There is a sad serenity, almost, about the land that he walks upon. But as he continues down this path, he does suddenly begin to hear something stir. And as he walks a little further on, you can see just ahead in the distance there are two bugs who appear to be walking back and forth with their heads held low, and they look much like Pelo himself, covered in this coat of moss, but this moss is brown and appears to be sagging, and if cares to look, he'll notice pieces of it drifting off to the ground as they move back and forth. And at this moment, and at this distance, they don't appear to have noticed you.
I think this place makes Pelo feel on edge, more so than he'd like to be. So even though he almost feels a sense of kinship with these two bugs, he still also feels a slight hint of wariness. So he will try and drop down into his smaller bushy self once more and try and approach unassumedly, and maybe, just maybe, try and start a conversation as he gets a little bit closer.
So, as Pelo drops down into the less assuming form and carries on down cautiously towards the bug closest to him, he doesn't get very many steps ahead before he begins to clearly hear a low mumbling from the bug. It seems almost erratic, almost manic in its nature, but very low and to itself as it continues to just walk back and forth with its head held low.
And is there any easy way past these creatures or around them without drawing too much attention?
Roll me an investigation for Pelo.
Could be a 13.
With a quick scan of your environment, you will see that just above you is a sort of ledge seems to lead to a pathway over the heads of these bugs that, with a dexterous enough jump, you might be able to make it to.
And just trying to analyse the risks of this for one moment. Does it seem as if Pelo were to miss this jump, where might he land up?
It doesn't take much strategizing to deduce that if Pelo were to attempt the jump and fail, he would land in the direct proximity of this bug in front of him.
Well, that being the case, I think I'll clamber into position to ready myself for this feat to try and jump to this ledge. But just before doing so, he would still like to call out to the bug, just to make sure. But very much prepared to leap at any hint of danger.
And what does Pelo call out to this bug?
Friend?
And as his words echo through the cavernous space in front of him, it seems to sharply pique the attention of the bug in front of him. And as its eyes stare at Pelo, you can hear the mumbling get louder and turn to a frantic, manic, almost barking as these milky eyes that stare at him begin to scowl. And this bug moves very quickly towards Pelo, and I'll need to get Pelo to roll a dexterity saving throw with advantage, since he was astute enough to prepare himself for this.
That's going to be a 7 with advantage.
A 7 with advantage unfortunately means that before Pelo has had a chance to reckon with the situation, the speed at which this bug moves towards him was just too quick, and the entire body of the bug launches into the breast of Pelo, and this almost sharp, hardened nub of foliage atop its head nearly pierces into his chest, and he will take 3 points of damage.
Well, clearly not a friend. And this has jigged some more memories in him, though, in an instant, in a flash, and almost that muscle memory comes back to him in one moment of pain. He remembers he has trained for this. And so I think he's ready to fight back.
How does Pelo proceed?
Well, right off the bat, he's going to quickly draw his fawn from his side, brandishing it high to the air, swing it down fast and swiftly to the back of this mossy creature before him. which will be a 15 to hit.
Which indeed hits.
For 7 damage.
And so, as Pelo's sword swings down onto the crown of this bug, how is it that he ends him?
He's going to instinctually aim for the join in its carapace between head and body, with the curve of his fawn almost designed for finding those gaps in the armour, and he'll slink it in, hook it into the crevice, and swiftly and efficiently sink it in to end the fight.
And with that impressively graceful, intuitive movement, Pelo's thorn quickly makes the cut, and the bug is forced to the floor and almost immediately curls into a husk of itself and just rolls slightly on the floor before becoming motionless. And as it does so, it appears to drop some coin, some geo, upon the floor by its side.
And before stopping to pick up his new loot, Pelo, I suppose, would turn and face this second creature and leap towards it, ready to strike again.
So Pelo is leaping in its direction without necessarily first attacking, or leaping in an attempt to attack in one fell swoop.
Leaping first, not wanting to get too brash, and readying his shield upon landing, soon to strike if he needs to.
Well, for this leap, could you roll me an acrobatics check, please?
It's a square 10.
With a 10, Pelo's trained body quite expertly makes the leap forward and lands to the ground, shield at the ready, at just the right distance to have not quite come into contact with the bug, but at just a distance far enough that in a few moments' time the bug will turn around in its pacing back and forth to see Pelo. So just in those moments, as Pelo stands and watches the bug just about to turn, what are his next movements?
He's waiting for that look in its eyes to see if there is a mind behind them, or if this is more beast than bug.
And as he holds himself, bracing for that turn, this lost soul of a bug turns its body, and just like before, these milky, mindless eyes scowl towards him, and that mumbling becomes louder and more vicious. And he is just about to set off, to speed towards you,
And then Pelo knows what he must do. And he would aim to try and do the same again to this next creature, but to almost sidestep on its approach and catch it by the scruff as it does, and hopefully end this fight quickly once again.
Go ahead and roll for your attack.
That'll be a natural 1 for a total of 4.
With such a roll, Pelo prepares himself to step aside as this bug comes hurtling towards him. But even though he feels this newfound memory and confidence to his battle, he unfortunately must admit to himself that he is still somewhat rusty as he makes an unfortunate slip of the foot and is caught in the side by this charge. However, taking only 1 point of damage due to the attempt to evade.
With a quick grimace, but not enough to distract him in the moment, he goes again, with that fawn raise, trying to slink it in between a gap in this creature's armour. And he does so this time, attacking for a total of 21.
Having had his body fail him once, Pelo makes sure it does not happen again, and accurately lands his hit,
which should do 5 points of damage.
And the hit cracks against the body of the bug, and the bug is sent launched backwards several centimeters away from this bug, so that he now rests momentarily dazzled by the strike. But as he shakes his body off, this vicious bug once again begins to mumble and bark and scowl its eyes, ready to charge back in your direction.
Oh, this time, feeling the pain he's recently felt, he's going to charge back at this little creature, seizing the moment while he can. Head first, shield raised high, looking to bash this creature out of the way.
As Pelo in turn charges forth in this battle of might, I'll ask you to roll a strength against the bugs.
That's an 8.
You hurtle with your shield against the bug, and though the feeling is strong and brutal as you clash together, you just about knock this bug down to the ground, onto its back, and it is prone and flailing.
I'm never one to enjoy wanton suffering. Pelo will see if this time he can end the fight with hopefully one more humane strike to the creature's sternum.
And since the bug lays on the ground, flailing, you make the strike quite easily. You may roll for damage.
That'll be a total of 4 points of damage.
Which therein ends the bug. And once again you see the life drain from its form and it curl into itself, into this husk, as I say, covered in this brown, decaying moss. And all is once again quiet along the walkway.
Well, Pelo will begin gathering any loose bits of geo around on the ground near him, and also look to pick up some of this moss, compare it to his own, see the nature of it, and see if he can figure out why it is like this.
As Pelo wanders round to gather up the geo, he finds a total of 30 that he can stow away. And then, having done so, bending down to pick up a sample of this moss that wilts away from the deceased bug, he finds it comes away very easily, wanting to come away, and almost crumbles in Pelo's hand. And comparing it to his own, you can see it just seems without life, without vigor.
A small sadness reigns over him in that moment. And another gentle reminder that he must be on the right path. He's not sure why, but these husks, they don't surprise him nearly as much as they should. And he feels like whatever training he had before, these were the reason for it.
And so, with that new sense of resolution, does Pelo continue on down the path?
Indeed he does.
Well, making his way further along, weaving through the winding, narrowing and opening paths of these tunnels. It's not long before Pelo begins to notice that the environment around him subtly begins to change. Along the cobbled paths of these tunnel ways creep growing green vines along the floor. There are sprouting bushels that begin to pop from the stone walls, and before you quite realize it, you are suddenly surrounded by what is a tangled, weaving blanket of forest covering the whole of your surroundings. And now I will get Pelo to roll me a perception check, please.
It's going to be a 24.
And so, with a 24, perhaps as Pelo is quite a lot more wary due to the rapid change in his environment, he remains sharp to any subtle movement around him, and as he enters into this area, he senses a presence just above, behind, and to the left of him, hiding on some foliage-covered platform, some sort of bug, beast perhaps. It's unclear, but he can most certainly sense its movement.
He's just going to keep that in his peripheries. Try not to give away that he's aware he's being watched. But carry on down the path nonetheless, seeing what intent this observer has.
As Pelo begins to head forward, he only takes a few steps forward before he notices some little distance away is some sort of shrouded entranceway covered in green foliage that appears to be guarded by what looks like two bugs, quite heavily armoured, though it is difficult to tell the detail from the distance you're at. And then it's not one or two more steps before you, in your peripheral, notice something rushing towards the back of you.
He'll quickly lift his shield up and jump on the spot once more to turn and face whatever is assailing him.
And Pelo, with his adept perception, turns to face this presence that hurtles towards him, raises his shield, and almost immediately feels the strike of a needle against it that reverberates against his form. And he stares now up at a female bug, grey in colour, quite thin but shapely, with a long, pointed, drooping nose, but a face and expression of intense, what looks to you like inquisitiveness almost, as she stares at your form. And as you stand, your shield held, this nail against your shield, realizing that you both merely stay still in this moment. This bug withdraws the nail and stands on guard, ready, but not preparing to attack.
Pelo will do the same, stepping back ever so slightly and breaking the moment. You're not like the others. There's a mind behind your eyes.
I was about to say the very same to you. You have escaped Greenpath untainted. What business do you have here?
I've not escaped anywhere, and whilst you're wielding a nail like that, my business is my own.
And you can see her looking very intently into your eyes, furrowing her brow, trying to look deeply into the sense of you.
Say, I don't suppose you come from Dirtmouth?
And what if I did?
I think there's someone there that's looking for you.
I think that is unlikely.
Mason?
And she raises her brow at those words. So you have met my daughter, which means you have come from the surface.
Yes, very recently, in fact.
And at these words you can see her whole form relax quite considerably as she still holds her nail in hand, but much more casually by her side. We have not had very many new guests to this place since the winds have changed. How on earth did you brave the storm?
I'm not sure, but your elder said the same thing. Honestly, I don't remember much before getting into your town. It was cold and I was so very tired, but before that's just the fog. And as for how I escaped here, this is where I believe I'm going.
And she looks at you as you say these words with, again, a deep interest and inquisitiveness, as if she's trying to solve a puzzle, as if you speak to her some sort of riddle.
If you have any clues to my situation, I'd be awfully grateful to hear them. I was coming here on almost pure instinct, but the further I come, the more it feels right. I mean, look at this place. It's beautiful, isn't it? Much better than up there. And look, as he shakes his little mossy cloak towards her. We almost match. Me and this place.
Yes, as you should. Much more as you should. Beautiful, maybe. I say Overgrown is what it is. I'm not sure, from what you say, how familiar you are with this place, but Greenpath has stretched far beyond its usual realms. It tangles into the rest of Hallownest, and the people there, once sacred to the place, they begin to wilt. They begin to lose their minds. It is a dangerous affair, especially when they come this close to my town. It is why I am here, to defend my children and my townsfolk.
You're doing a brave thing. I chanced upon some of those mad bugs a moment ago, and the fighting them isn't scary, it's just seeing them like that.
You killed them?
I defended myself.
And she looks at you with a very firm and decided nod. I think I can trust you. Follow me.
Okay.
And she walks ahead down the path a few paces and stops to crouch behind a large bushel that obscures her presence and yours from the tall bugs that seem to be off in the distance. And she gestures with her head over in their direction and says, "Look here. Can you see them?"
Just about. Are they friends of yours, or?
I wouldn't quite say that. They are beginning to wield these creatures, not quite as the bugs I believe you may have seen over there, but their minds are fading, and they are certainly losing the call. Regardless, they stand guard in front of that entranceway. They were not there before, and they will not let me pass.
Where does it lead?
Well, this is the question. It makes me uneasy that they stand there. I fear they are hiding something, or protecting something. Something I do not trust. But you look like them. Almost, at least. Perhaps you will have better luck.
I can try. Seems as good a place as any for an adventurer like me.
Well, go on. And she begins to usher you with her hands and look at you quite fervently.
Well, if I do my part, why don't you go back up home? I think your daughter wants to hear your stories. I can find my way back. I'll let you know how it goes.
She told you this?
She did. one of the first things I remember, actually. She was sweet.
She is sweet. It has been some time since I have returned to the surface. Perhaps I better go before I begin to lose a sense of myself. Thank you. What was your name?
Pelo.
Thank you, Pelo.
It's the one thing I've not forgotten. But, sorry, before you go,
Yes?
I'm so sorry, I don't want to seem like I'm prying, but is your son around at all? I was told he might be able to help me not get lost down here.
Yes. Our young map maker. I'm sure he is somewhere, although, to be honest, I couldn't quite tell you. I do try to make sure that he stays away from the spread of the Greenpath, so my advice to you would be to look as far away from it as you could.
To the Black Egg?
Quite possibly.
Okay. Well, thank you. I'll keep an eye out for him.
Thank you, Pelo. I feel I can trust that you will look after things here. But I will return soon, after a short visit home.
Good. Be careful.
I will. You too.
I will.
And, well, if you find anything out, you know where to find me.
Yeah, I will. Okay.
She gives you a stern nod as she very quickly, almost noiselessly, darts away the direction that you came and leaves you alone.
Well, that was an impressive sort of someone. If she's scared of those guys, they must be pretty dangerous. Suppose I should try and sneak a little bit closer and see if my mind can come up with anything. They do look awfully familiar. And with that, Pelo's going to sneakily try and get a better vantage point to take a look at these wilting guards. See if he can get a look into their eyes and look closer at their cloaks. And just try and figure out exactly what is going on here and what it means for him as well.
So, if Pelo's going to attempt to get a little closer, I'll get him to roll a stealth for me.
That's going to be a 7.
Well, with a 7, as Pelo attempts to move as slyly as he possibly can to an obscured bush slightly closer by to these guards. In the transition, he manages to get about halfway as closer before he hears a deep, short grunt from the two guards that stand there as they both say, "Halt." And almost stand further upright and bring their shields more tightly to them. And at this distance, you can now see them a little more clearly. You see that they look quite a lot like yourself, shrouded in moss, some of which looks fresh, some of which, just in parts and patches, begins to fall away and become brown. And you can smell, even from this distance, this rotting, this decaying, which feels very much like it's coming from these guards. And the one looks over to you and says, "You are too verdant, and you smell of fresh new growth. You cannot pass."
What lays this way, old guard?
"That is no business of yours, verdant one."
Are you sure of that?
And as you say those words, and you look into his eyes, they appear almost as if he's dizzy in considering that. But he suddenly snaps back to himself and says, "Begone, fresh one."
Okay. Pelo looks down humbly, begins stepping away. I mean no trouble.
And which they simply stare and hold fast their tall shields that cover their whole body, almost blocking the entranceway like a double door of sorts.
Pelo's going to slink away to find a spot just out of sight, a moment where he can just think and pull some thoughts together. For he does not believe what he has just been told, and he sees the same ailment behind the eyes of this guard, brewing, at least, as those which affected the smaller bugs earlier. And that saddens him. Deeply so. In fact, he almost feels guilty over that thought. But instead he tries to put it to good use and pulls each of these different thoughts together and all these few memories that he's got since being deep underground here. And he is fairly sure that he is in the right place and that his verdant coat should be welcome here. It should be what all of these are aiming for. But instead, they're looking to wilt. And so he realizes he must change himself. He is thinking of any way he can, but the wilting moss from before was nothing. He couldn't patch that into his cloak. It wouldn't work. He couldn't just take it off. I don't think he ever remembers a time where he wasn't draped in it. I'd feel awful. So instead he just sits and tries so hard to remember a way to get through this. And before long, when he lifts his head up from in between his knees, deep in thought, he looks around and he sees his cloak has changed. That the little legs he had scrunched up before him have now gone. And his cloak is dark and brown and wilting. And he shimmies around and he can see that he has changed now into a slightly smaller version of himself, a different version of himself, one almost identical to one of the creatures he slayed before. And all in one rushing go, as this sensation comes over him, a whole new, almost as if discovering an extra appendage. It's just almost awakened in him, and he can so clearly remember now just parts of his training before, and it was the training to give him the ability to reshape himself as he needed, as he uses for the first time in a very long time his wild shape to change his form into that of a wilting mossbug.
And so, as Pelo stands in elation at this remembered ability, this wild change in shape to that of the Wiltkin, admiring his new form, what does he choose to do?
Take a deep breath and again on instinct almost head back towards where the two guards were, but this time very consciously trying to ignore them with every ounce of his being and just sliver through.
So, with this new resolution, Pelo makes confident strides in his new, smaller form towards the two guards that stand there. And as he's moving at some pace for the small creature he now is towards them, he sees that they very strongly and firmly step aside, grunting as they do, to leave the entranceway open, inside of which Pelo would just catch a glimpse of this golden light that seems a little hard to distinguish at the distance. As Pelo gets a little bit closer and closer, suddenly the guards come back together, with their shields planted firmly in the ground, and one calls out to Pelo and says, "You look as the Wiltkin, but you smell of fresh growth. This is deception." And they hold their position, looking angrily at your form.
Pelo thinks to himself that didn't quite go as planned, but that could have gone a lot worse. So he stays there for a moment, just not backing away any further, but not getting any closer either, and just trying to figure out how much sense is standing there with these guards, or if they too are acting purely on instinct. Is there any chance to goad them, perhaps? Or is it even worth bothering appealing to whatever remnants of reason they may still have?
Roll an insight check.
That'll be a 14 for insight.
You look them deeply in the eyes to see what remnants of mind lies behind them. And you can almost see a lingering hope of some kind of soul that sits behind the eyes. But they are dizzy and confused and very nearly almost lost. And it doesn't seem hopeful to try.
With Pelo's legs being so used to walking, he's not one to sit around and wait. So instead of smashing his little head against this brick wall, he's going to just turn on around for now. Head back in the direction he came, look for some more clues, hopefully jog more of his memory. Because he doesn't think he can win a fight against these two yet. But maybe there's another way.
And is there anywhere that Pelo specifically has in mind he's seen so far that he might be heading to?
I think just on his way back out, he would probably first of all like to take some snippings and some samples of some of this green life around him. Despite what the others are saying, it is still beautiful and very much reminds him of home. So he does want to take it with him. But from there, we'll be heading back past where he first fought, then back further still to where he first descended into the well, and hopefully head towards the Black Egg Temple, and maybe, just maybe, find another helping hand.
So before Pelo sets off and attempts to take some of these cuttings of the leaves around him, he'll take his thorn and make a slice into the leaves to remove them from the vine. But he finds, as soon as he does so, the green, lush leaves very quickly turn brown and begin to shrivel.
That is a shame. What are we going to do about this? And he drops them to the ground, takes a reluctant sigh, and heads back through the crossroads that seemed forgotten.
Well then, making your way back down the path you travelled before, over towards where you first landed at the crossroads, you once again encounter some of those lost souls you'd seen before, and quite but a lot more quickly and dexterously end them before you move on, accruing another 30 geo in the process. Making the rest of your walk through these cold and quiet caverns quite calm as you walk past the signpost and head in the direction of what has been labelled the Black Egg Temple. So as you carry on down the path, on a journey that has been quite serene so far, you begin to hear your first signs of life in a few minutes. And it's a distant humming, a tuneful humming, echoing in the chamber ahead of you. As you continue to walk, you enter into a much wider open space, and in front of you is a huge black temple formed in the shape of some giant godly mask of some sort. And sitting on the floor in front of this temple is a young grey bug with a long, drooping cone of a nose, and he is scribbling away at a piece of parchment as he continues to hum his tuneful song, and he seems truly absorbed in the work he's doing.
Without really realising, as Pelo approaches the stranger, he joins in with the harmonious humming.
And as Pelo hums along to the same tune, almost creating a chorus larger than the two voices themselves as it echoes throughout this chamber you both find yourselves in. It's enough to catch the attention of the young boy, who suddenly stops in his humming, his scribbling. His head turns upwards to you and says, Oh, hello there. Come down to explore these beautiful old ruins. Aren't they magnificent? So many clues to be found, uncovering the secrets of this long-lost kingdom. Who could be satisfied with map-making alone, eh?
It's the adventure itself, isn't it?
Precisely.
Well, get the feeling this place has many, many truths buried deep here.
This place especially. Who was to think so much was going on beneath my feet as I grew as a young boy? What could these mysteries mean? This tablet, for example. And he gestures his head towards what looked like was perhaps once the entranceway to this temple, but is now entirely covered over with this large golden tablet. And as you look up at it, it reads, let this tune to the past follies of fallen kingdoms be sealed and forgotten. Our long-sought God has revealed themselves. And you see this young boy staring up at the tablet in awe. Looks back to you and says, "What could it mean?" I make notes of them on parchment whenever I find them. I think it's a fascinating clue.
Well, it's certainly fascinating. But I don't know. Do you ever get the feeling some doors maybe shouldn't be opened?
No, I can't say I do.
Well, maybe I'm just getting a little bit more cautious. But
I would die to know what was behind that door. Have you seen much of any writings or tablets in your travels?
I can't say I have. I'm new to this place. Don't really know what I'd be looking for.
Well, they're scattered everywhere, if you look for them. I'd offer you a good wage if you were to find me any morsels of information.
Okay, well that sounds helpful, in fact. Their gods revealed themselves. Don't you think the place should be happier? If that were true?
You could be right. I don't really see any sign of these gods, to be honest.
No. I don't think they're mine anyway.
I'm not sure I have a god. I'm too busy thinking about the secrets of this kingdom.
Keeping your notes?
Yes. And my maps, I suppose.
Not a fan?
Well, my father said I should learn the trade and come down here to explore the kingdom and make maps of my own. What he doesn't know is he thought he took all the copies of his old maps away with him before he went to the wilds beyond, but, well, I managed to find an old sketch that he'd left behind.
Really? Sketch of where, exactly?
Why, of the entire kingdom.
How do you have it? How have you kept it? So I've been led to believe this place was sprawling into the unknown.
It is, indeed. And my father, my great father, he mapped it all.
He must have been a great man.
He is. And he's now mapping lands beyond these. I'm sure doing a great job of it.
Well, everyone has their calling, don't they?
That's right. His is cartography. I don't think mine is.
Well, just think. Obviously you know him a lot better than I do, but maybe he never wanted you to make maps. Maybe he sent you down here to find your own calling.
Come to think of it, it was rather easy to find the map that he left behind. And from a pouch that sits at his side, he unfurls a parchment and reveals to you this intricate web of sketches that seems to detail all of the caverns within this now evidently vast kingdom that lays beyond you.
The world must be so much bigger than I thought.
I struggle to comprehend it as well.
Excuse me, this place here, and he points down to this particular part of the map and pulls the young man in close to look at it as well. This bit here, this Lake of Un.
Yes.
Do you know anything about it? What can you tell me?
No. Since Greenpath began to grow over, well, my mother gave me strict instructions not to go near there. I'm to explore the rest of the kingdom, if I can find passage.
That might be quite tricky looking at this.
Yes.
Sorry, I just had to ask. There's something about that place.
It looks nice.
Well, sorry, I've been terribly rude. I actually have met your mother and sister.
Oh.
Carried away with myself. I apologise profusely.
You've met my mother and Mason?
Yes, very, very recently, in fact, and I think I'm due to pay them a visit soon as well.
And you spoke to them?
Indeed, they are well.
Tell me, is Mason terribly jealous?
Well, when you say it like that, I think there might be a hint at least.
I knew it.
I've got to go and tell her a story, I believe, in exchange for a compass.
Yes. Well then, if you're after the compass, you'll probably want this. And he lifts the parchment map towards you.
For me?
Why, yes. I've got lots of copies.
Oh, okay then. I wouldn't want to take your father's last map.
No, that's not my father's map. Just one of my copies.
Well, considering you're not into the craft, you've done a pretty fantastic job.
Well, my father made sure of it.
Your family, they're a kind bunch. Thank you.
There's not a whole lot of kindness left. I think, well, my mother would say, we need to spread all the kindness we have.
I think she's right. And that's why I need to get over here, as he points down to the bit guarded on the map. I don't suppose you'd have any ideas how to get past a couple of guards over here, would you?
Guards? I'm no fighter.
I can handle myself a bit, but I'm no fool either. They look beyond my means, so I do have the ability to change my shape, but they said something. I smelt too fresh.
That makes sense. They don't smell very nice at all. Not that I've been terribly close to them. Well, maybe you could trick them. Perhaps there's some sort of charm you could use.
Hopefully. But that's why I'm due back to Dirtmouth. To visit your sister, swap a story, and maybe lighten my pockets a little bit, as he shakes around his little pouch of geo. Not exactly sure how much this is worth, but it's got to be enough for something, right?
Sounds like a lot.
Yeah, I found it not too long ago.
I hope to find some too. I'm sure there's plenty of it in this kingdom.
Looking at this, I think you might have to go a little bit deeper though.
In time.
Well, I know your family were concerned about you. Are you going to be staying down here long?
Concerned? Well, if that's the case, perhaps I shall, as soon as I'm finished taking my notes, head back up to the surface for a short while.
Yeah, right. I think they'll appreciate that.
Okay. Thanks for telling me.
It's all right. And I'll do my best to keep the path safe.
And he nods at you in a nod that seems reminiscent of his mother's.
Well, thank you for this, truly.
My pleasure.
I'll be on the lookout for more of that.
Please do. I'd love to hear about it. And if you could maybe take notes, that would be great.
I'll do what I can. Look after yourself.
You too.
And with that, Pelo turns away, fairly confident. Now he's got a map in his hand that he can easily find his way back to Dirtmouth and go and stop back into that shop from earlier.
And with that, Pelo makes his way along the paths he's very familiar with by now, heading back to the entranceway of the crossroads, and quite dexterously climbing his way up the rope back onto the surface through the well, quite quickly finding himself back in town in that little huddled hamlet of buildings. And you say it is Mason and the map makers wishes to go to first?
Yes.
Well, as he enters into the shop, he once again sees Mason. Behind her, in one of the bunks that is lodged in the wall, lays her mother, fast asleep, snoring. And leaning in a chair up against the bed is Mason, also sleeping, taking a moment's repose before almost instinctually recognizing a presence at the door and bolting awake sharply, rubbing her face softly and composing herself to greet you. Oh, hello again.
Hello again. It's been a while, hasn't it?
Not too long.
Oh, time around here feels oh so strange.
Sometimes time seems to drag on and on when I'm sat here in the shop.
Well, I thought I'd come and tell you that I bumped into your mother, but I see that's a little unnecessary now.
She told me all about it before she decided to take a nap. I think she might be awfully tired.
Well, she's been bravely defending this place. Say she's earned it.
I believe it.
Oh, she has. Almost put her nail to my neck. Not that I fault her.
She didn't tell me that. She said she ran into you, but not that she attacked you.
No, not so strong as an attack, but She's a formidable one. And then guess what?
What?
Your brother too.
You saw Conifer?
Indeed. He is happy. Slightly strange one, but
Yes.
he seems to be enjoying what he's doing. He lent me this. So I wave the map out.
What progress he's made. How could he possibly have mapped the entire kingdom by now? He's not been gone that long.
I think he's had a little help from some friends.
Wow. Making friends. I bet he's got so many stories to tell.
Well, he does assure me he'll be back soon to share them.
Amazing. I can't wait.
That's good. Well, he has also asked me, actually, to keep an eye out for some things as well whilst I'm travelling down there, and suggested I might need to take some notes myself. And so, I've been busy. And he empties his pockets of geo onto the table in front of him. Is any of this enough to get these?
That's more than enough. 10 geo for the parchment and paper.
Thank you. And this compass as well. How much for that?
Oh, that would be 220 geo, I'm afraid.
Okay, well, maybe next time. But nonetheless, these would be very helpful.
Fantastic. And she very anxiously bundles up the parchment and writing tool into a little package that she hands over to you quite delicately, and then draws one of the geo coins across the table and into a pouch just beyond the bottom of her desk. A pleasure to do business with you.
And with you, sir. That was easy. Well, I believe your elder mentioned to me that there's a shop. Another one.
That's right. Dobe.
Which one is it?
Oh, if you just carry on back that way through the town, you'll see it.
Okay. Well, I think I'm due to pay him a visit now as well. Got a puzzle of my own to solve.
Certainly. Let me know how it goes.
And I will. This place, it's just rife with stories, isn't it?
Don't make me jealous.
You shouldn't be jealous. You're part of one.
I never really think about it like that.
Well, for anyone who comes into this place, if that well is the only way down, then you're the start of every story.
Wow. And she, looking up to the ceiling, but at the same time sort of into herself, begins to ponder with this expression of awe on her face at those words.
I'll be back soon.
Right. Yes. I look forward to it.
Thank you. Send my regards, if you please.
Oh, yes, I will.
And with that then, Pelo heads out the door to try and find the next shop in town.
As you enter out onto the snow-covered street, once again feel that sharp coldness of the air, very different to that of the underground caverns you've been spending most of your time of late. Roll me a perception check once more.
And that's a natural 20 for a total of 25.
alive. As you just start heading in the direction you believe the shop of so-called daub happens to be, off in the distance, past the well, on the wind, you can most distinctly hear this wailing that you almost instinctively know comes from a bug of deep distress. It doesn't sound panicked or as if this bug is perhaps immediately in danger, but a wail of deep grief and mourning.
Just takes it in for a moment and empathizes with that pain, that loneliness. Feeling again that sense of familiarity, almost as if he's heard that noise before. But then he shakes it off, not getting too caught up in this moment and the bigger mysteries of this world. He knows what he must do for now, and that is find a charm to help him past these guards. So he'll steel himself to that sound. And yes, and then step on inside.
So, steeling himself, he steps towards the other side of the line of buildings that make the town's front, past that wrought iron bench and curving lamp that greeted him on first entering Dirtmouth, and comes across, quite quickly, a building atop which sits a sign of shellwood with the word daub crudely written on top of it. And as Pelo enters into this shop, he is met once again with quite a tight space. And one of the first things that Pelo notices is that the walls and shelves are quite bare for a merchant shop. There is a plain wooden desk in the centre, behind which stands a large, tall, round bug in very plain dress, who seems exceedingly pleased to see you, and with a large grin across his broad, round face, he looks to you as you come through the door and says, "You buy, please? Geo for me." And on the desk in front of him, you will see 2 items which lay plainly without pedestal on top. One is a strange-looking charm that emits a faint odour of rotting, and in crude, curved letters you can see it's labelled Wilter's Reek. and next to that appears to be some sort of rancid egg. And the purveyor, who you assume to be Dobe, grins widely at you.
Well, hello there, stranger.
Hello.
Is this a good place to spend some geo?
Oh. You can see his whole form begin to bounce and jiggle with excitement when you say this. Yes.
Well, I think I have some geo in exchange for these items.
Yes. Geo, where?
It's right here. He nervously takes out his pouch and just plonks all of it on the table, not having much sense of worth himself.
And as you do so, and you almost catch a little wobbling of the head as the jingling of the geo in the pouch excites Dobe. He tries to restrain his eagerness in grabbing for the pouch and looking inside. And seemingly, upon seeing any amount of geo, he begins to once again bounce very softly on the spot and says, "Yes, yes, thank you," and pushes the two items over to you without even looking at them really, and then begins to stare at the money once again just for a moment before closing the pouch and throwing it behind him, at which point you hear a little jingling noise, and you can quite clearly see that there's quite a pile of pouches that he's thrown your pouch onto.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
I'll be sure to bring more geo if you...
Yes, yes. More geo for me, please.
Okay. And what is this for? He holds up the rancid egg in front of him.
He stares at the rancid egg in your hand, sort of shakes his head in bemusement, looks back to you and smiles and says, "More geo for me, please."
Well, okay then. Thank you. And Pelo then edges back out of this shop, maintaining a bit of eye contact until he's all the way clear.
And Pelo leaves the shop with one rancid egg and the Wilter's Reek charm, where he will have to find somewhere sturdy to sit down in order to equip it.
Well then, here, inspired a little bit as well by the people in the shop just previously, he's going to find that nice iron bench and take a little rest while playing with his new trinkets.
And so, as you make your way over to the bench in the centre of town, and walk past the elder bug who still stands there, taking in the fresh air. Sitting down on the bench fills you with a deep sense of rest that you feel you may have needed after your adventures, short though they have been, throughout what you've seen of Hallownest so far. It certainly feels good to be sitting down at this time. And you begin to play with your trinkets, as you say. And as the elderbug stands there, without looking at you precisely, but almost certainly to yourself as the only one around, he says, "How's travels?"
Better and worse than I might have expected. It's a strange place down there.
Oh, a strange place indeed.
I feel like even the walls have more memories than I do.
These walls certainly hold more memories than you can imagine.
It's amazing, really. And almost as terrifying at the same time. What could have done this?
I'm afraid the answers you seek may already be lost to time, though I'm sure you'll find clues the longer you spend down there, as long as you're careful.
If not me, someone. Treasures like this don't stay lost for long.
Time will tell.
Well, I would love to stay for longer. This bench is awfully comfortable.
Yes, I find it so.
But still, I must press on. We all have a calling after all.
Aye. Some grander than others.
Thank you, Elderbug.
No need to thank me. Thank you for your company.
And you for yours. It might be the last I get for a moment.
I hope to see you soon, traveller.
Aye, me too. But still, what do you think? As he hops on up, showing off his new charm fitted into his shell just below his cloak. Think I've done that right? Don't you?
Well, you certainly smell vile.
Yeah. I preferred it the old way, but this should work. This should work. I'll see you soon.
Safe travels.
Thank you. And then we head back to the well for another descent.
Very practiced at getting in and out of this well, and making your way through the caverns, as you've done so a few times now. You descend back into Hallownest, and it's not long before you are once again just shy a short distance away from the guarded entranceway.
Well, I think it's now or never. And he makes sure he finds a nice secluded spot again, away from any prying eyes. And he'll get down nice and low, and he will use all his focus to muster himself into the shape of a wilkin once more, when he's sure it has worked. And then he'll look down once more and see for sure on the trail of decay that he's leaving behind him, and take a smell of that unfresh air that now surrounds him. And he'll march on forward to the guards, hopefully for the last time.
And as Pelo once more confidently marches towards the guards with his new scent and his new smell, the guards let out a firm grunt in unison, both stepping aside, firmly planting themselves either side of the entranceway. Pelo once again getting a glimpse of that glistening light from inside. And you are able to walk past the guards. And as you do so, you feel their bodies slam back together just as you pass, closing your way back, leaving only forward. And you enter upon this new area as you just make your way out of this short tunnel of leaves into a great, wide, beautiful temple of forest, shrouded in leaves. You are in this domed room filled with sprawling foliage, with the occasional orange tint in amongst the green dotted around here and there. Dying leaves gently falling, almost like soft rain to the ground. On the floor in front of you is this gently bubbling pool of what appears to be warm water. And in the centre of this warm lake protrudes a grassy mound. And in the middle of the grassy mound twists a pale green glowing root, which seems to hold, as if a pedestal, this intricately carved green thorn, as if a sword protruding from the proverbial stone, with this god-like beam of light which shines down upon it from the roof.
A moment of sharp realization falls upon Pelo, where a lot of the whimsy of the past few hours fades away, and memories long forgotten come bubbling back to the surface. The years of walking, the trudging, the arid, desolate land around him, the lonely nights, and the blistered feet, all have led to precisely this moment. And he looks down in his hand at this withered, chipped fawn that he's called his own for so long. He just looks at it, and then looks at the one before him, and he casts it to the side. And he changes out of his wilting form almost ashamed to wear it in a place like this. And he stands tall, as tall as he can, with his bright green leaves and moss draping him in a much more regal way than before, giving him a new sense of power and purpose. And he edges over, without even realising it, to this fawn. And he slowly grips one hand around it, a finger each at a time, realising their potential. He grips it tight, and it feels good. And he tries with all his might, and then some more, to heave it from its resting place.
And as Pelo focuses all his might into the task of pulling this thorn from its pedestal, he heaves it out of its place, able to raise it in the air. And he has in his hand the dream thorn, allowing its wielder to remend the tether between dreams and reality. And pulling it from its pedestal, he now sees that spectral orbs of geometric light begin to float upwards from this pale green root, from the orifice where the thorn once sat. And they float into the air as if bubbles, the essence of something.
A dream. We're coming. We're coming. He holds that dream fawn tight in his hand. He looks around again in his surroundings, almost with new eyes now, seeing both what is before him and everything that's behind him too. Now knowing that for whatever reason he was sent away from this place, just to come back and know it was his job all along, to return all of us to the dream that unspun. And I think the first thing he's going to do, in fact, is quickly turn back the way he came from and head to those two guards, for they only had moments left. He wanted to go, and not with malice or hate, but with love. He wanted to go and stab them with this dream fawn, and hopefully release whatever of them is left to the dream, which they all long for.
And as Pelo, dream thorn in hand, walks back the way he came, their unguarded backs facing him, he raises his hand to make one powerful strike to hit them both. Roll for attack for me.
13.
He raises his hand to strike them both. and in one fell swoop, he almost hears the soaring resonance, the song of this thorn as it cuts through the very essence of these guards. And they, releasing what sounds like a moan of pure relief, dissipate into pure orbs of essence itself. And as you do so, and you see this essence float into the air, drift away into nothingness, you feel the last thoughts of these guards speak within your mind, both in unison as they had done before. They say, "Thank you, Dreamborne of Devotion."
And with that, Pelo feels a little bit proud to have actually achieved something on this long journey of his. And realizing now as he grapples with the weight of all of this realization, and almost chuckles to himself. He thought his story was coming to an end. I know so clearly this is just the beginning.